Well, good morning, everyone. I hope your day's off to a good start. It's off to a steamy start here in Texas. Wash, rinse, repeat. I think it's 90. It's supposed to be 90 something. Oh, man. Apologize, my voice is a little worse today than normal. It's just, I don't know if it's something in the air. I think it's the crepe myrtles are out right now, and I don't think my allergies like them. So, but anyway, if you're new, welcome to the channel. I'm the Lipstick Lady Pam. And if you're not new, welcome back. I'm so happy to have you here again. I would say I'm so happy to see you, but, I'm old, but I haven't completely lost my mind. Actually, I'm not old. That's one thing my husband and I, he does that a lot, talks about being so old and, like he's just worn out. And I'm like, you're not old. I mean, we're creeping up there, but we aren't old yet. Old is like, 80. And, the closer you get to 80, it's not as old as what it used to sound like. But, and the lipstick of the day, I just put it away, it's an Avon FMG satin lipstick in the color of Darla. So, which is funny because my one son's cat, she's right up there, I think, behind the kids in ranking in the house. Actually, she might bypass the kids. She's like the queen. But her name is Darla. So, I didn't even realize that until I looked today to see what color it was. But I wanted to come on here today, and I wanted to do my video today on biggest misconceptions. I have notes so I don't get quite as sidetracked. Biggest misconceptions about aging. Depending on where you are in your, life now, some of these, might not apply and some might. I'm in my upper 50s, very close to hitting that 60 mark. And these were just some of the things, five things that I had thought about that, are kind of things that you picture in your mind for aging that has actually been a misconception. It's not necessarily the way it's actually is or turned out to be. So, I'd be curious to see if y'all have some other of your own misconceptions that you have found on this journey of life that you thought life would be one way and it's not. But one of mine is retirement. Now, I grew up in the Midwest, and my goal in life basically was, when I grew up, I wanted to marry someone and raise a family. I always kind of pictured either living on like some kind of small farm, maybe. I was big into my horses, and I always figured, which there's another misconception, I always thought I'd always have horses. That was just, I'd always have a horse, and I'd raise my kids, and they would be into horses, and my grandkids would come along someday, and, I'd be able to get them a pony and teach them how to ride. Well, I don't live in the Midwest anymore. I live in Texas, where, my gosh, it's too hot. I can't even imagine owning a horse in Texas. Now, I know there's cowboys here, and there are many, many people that just have horses for, whatever reason. You're always seeing horse trailers on the road. I feel like my hair, I don't know. It was bothering me. Sorry. I feel like every time I go out, I see a horse trailer with a horse in the back, saddled up, ready to go. whether it's a cowboy, I don't know, or a cowgirl, I don't know, or if it's just, yeah, I don't know, maybe they trail ride more, I don't know. But anyway, that's just how I was. So I always thought I'd grow up and do that. And if I had a job, I always kind of pictured myself having my own like small business type thing, which I guess in a way that has kind of played out. But I always pictured, being that way. And then by the time my husband was old enough to retire, that he would retire, and by then we'd have, our house all paid for, all of our stuff would be paid off. We'd have no debt, and we would just live on his retirement, and, life would be grand. Well, it didn't quite turn out that way. My husband, over the years, had lots of health issues and was considered disabled quite a few years ago. So he, never actually, well, he is retired now, and he does get a small pension from his job that he had. But, it's not like what we thought it would be. And, obviously things were not paid off. We don't live on a farm. We live in an apartment in a city, of all things. We grew up and lived in a rural community, farming community with 4, maybe 5,000 people in its heyday. And we now live in a city. Well, actually, it's like they call them twin cities or sister cities, so I think it's twin. Because it's two cities that are so close together that the only way you know when you're leaving the one to go to the other is the sign that says, you are leaving, you are entering, so okay, I'm not in Bryan anymore, I'm in College Station. And, or vice versa. So we don't live anywhere where I had anticipating us living. Our stuff is not all paid off. Obviously we have rent, and even though we have 2 vehicles that are almost paid off, but not quite there yet. So, thought that would be long gone. And, it's just, I don't know. I always jokingly, hopefully, say, I'm going to retire. I'm going to take a half a day on the day I'm cremated. I'm only working till noon that day. So book my cremation for after 12. So, but, in reality, who knows? I mean, we're not promised tomorrow for one thing, but, and with the way things are nowadays with the economy, who knows? I could work till the day of cremation. I don't know. But pardon me while I itch my eye. Tell you, my allergies are horrible today. Even though I look on the weather app and it says it's low for allergies, I'm like, I don't know. My head is telling me a different story. But it also told me yesterday it wasn't going to rain, and I washed my car after days of knowing it. Well, actually, after a couple of weeks of knowing it really needed a bath, but it would either always rain or look like rain. In the past few days, it looked like rain, but then it never really rained. So I said, okay, I'm going to wash my car. And of course, I got it washed, and within a couple hours, it was pouring rain. So that was a waste of, some money getting my car washed. But anyway, back on track. Okay, so that was my first misconception of aging, was retirement. I don't know if I'm ever going to retire. And honestly, I don't know if I could, well, maybe at some point I would be happy just retiring with nothing that I have to do, but I'm not for sure. I like to have something to do in my day, getting up with having a cup of coffee and thinking, okay, that's the highlight of the day. We'll just hang out here till lunch comes around. I don't know if I'll ever be that person. My dad was like that. He had to have something to do. I mean, the man had cancer and he drove himself to chemo up until the very end because he didn't want to bother people, and I think he just needed to feel that he could do things still himself. But retirement, that's a big conception. Okay, second one is, which kind of already touched on that, having your ducks in a row. Now, you always think when you get older, when you're younger, and you're picturing your older years, you're thinking, yep, gonna have that house paid for, and I'm in my 30s, or maybe your late 20s, whatever, buying this house, I'm gonna have it all paid for, I'm gonna be living here for free, gonna have all my things paid off, I'm gonna know, what exactly I'm doing day to day, what I gotta do, what I don't have to do. If you're somebody that likes to travel, okay, yep, I'm gonna go here for 6 months of the year, or I'm gonna go here 2 months and then to this next place for 2 months. I'm gonna be traveling all over. Maybe that's your thing. Well, sometimes life kind of throws a curveball. I am nowhere where I thought I would be. Actually, I figured we lived in Michigan. We also lived in Florida. And we only left Florida because doctors there told my husband he needed to be closer to family. And so we moved, and they were all in Michigan at the time. So we moved back to Michigan. Well, I think the doctors kind of misdiagnosed him on some things. And because he didn't decline like they thought he was going to decline. And we moved back there, and then our kids all moved away. So, we were there, and, we just figured, I always figured we'd be either in Florida or, afterwards, I thought, well, okay, I guess Michigan is where it's going to be. And, just kind of thought that's where we were going to be, and, we were going to work to have things, settled away and everything. But, it just didn't happen that way. Ended up coming to Texas. Our son and daughter-in-law came to Texas, and within a few years, we came to Texas. So, it's just sometimes life will throw a curveball at you, and or as they say, a door will close, another door will open. You just got to decide if you're gonna go through that door or if you're not going to. So, yeah, having your ducks all in a row. You might plan it that way, but don't be surprised if it doesn't necessarily turn out that way. Okay, and third one, who you would be. You always, like I said, I always pictured myself as, well, for one thing, I always pictured my kids living close proximity to me, my grandkids being, right there by us, same little town, my family all right there. I always thought I would be, the mom that the kids needed to, shoot ideas past, and, I don't know. I guess I don't really know what all I thought I was going to be to my grown kids, but I always thought for the grandkids, I always wanted to be, I guess because my parents were like this with my boys, that, I was going to be the grandma that would go pick up my grandkids after school, maybe take them to McDonald's, take them, to Walmart or someplace to get a little something to spoil them, take them home. I'd be the grandma to bake all the cookies and, just spoil the grandkids. And, everybody would love to come to our house for the holidays. And, I just, now I look back and I'm like, oh, no. Now our son is the one with the big house. We have the apartment. We go, if we even celebrate holidays, which are rare nowadays, we go to their house. If they're, if they have time and they feel like hosting a holiday, we go there. Because the kids here, our grandkids come here, they're bored out of their minds. They have nothing to do. We live in an apartment, and it's too small for them to run wild. Or at their house, they can run wild all they want. But our kids, they're at the age, they're married. They don't need us. They don't need to live right by us. They don't need to, come home to ask, how did you do this? How did you do that? Will you teach me to do this? Will you teach me to do that? I did that a lot. My dad taught me a lot of things. My dad taught me how to put tiles down, like linoleum, not ceramic tile, but like linoleum tile. He taught me how to do flooring. He taught me how to can tomatoes and dill pickles and hot peppers and things like that. My dad taught me a lot of that stuff, and I always kind of pictured having to teach my kids that. They don't really, other than teaching my one son how to make enchiladas, really, they haven't really needed me for a whole lot of anything. And the grandkids, they're nothing like I pictured grandkids being. Even if I did live on a farm, they probably would not be the grandkids that would be interested in coming over and riding a pony around. Grandkids nowadays, they don't have some kind of tablet in their hand or, something like that. They're not interested. They get, taking them to McDonald's after school wouldn't really be a treat. They get McDonald's all the time and better. Our grandkids, McDonald's would probably be a step down from what they're used to going and dining on. So, and taking them to Walmart. Walmart's toys are so pricey, you couldn't do that as much. And honestly, they probably wouldn't be interested in anything that wasn't, an expensive gift. So as far as, the toys, because they're so into digital things nowadays that, kids don't play with things that we played with, or even our kids. I raised two boys. They grew up with trucks and tractors and, a lot of things like that. These kids, although we did have all my son's Tonka trucks, brought them all down here. Actually, both of our kids' Tonka trucks, brought them down here to the boys, and they did play with them some out there, but it is so hot here in Texas. They can't go out and play in the summertime. And, now they're in school. So, they don't, I'm thinking they still have their trucks. I don't know. I'm guessing they do, but how often, if ever, do they play with them? That I kind of doubt. They have a trampoline they go out and play on, I think, sometimes. And other than that, they're kind of house people. They don't really, and when it's hot like it gets here, I can't say as I blame them. So who you're going to be to other people doesn't necessarily end up who you tend to be to other people, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And another misconception is people think as we get older, we're going to want to live in the South. You're going to want to live where it's warm because of arthritis, and you're not going to be able to move because it's cold. And although that can be true, I personally, because of my thyroid, do not handle the heat. Each year, I think I get worse with handling heat. Now, I'm not sure, because I know when it gets really cold here in the winter, I think, oh, I can't believe I lived in that. But when you live where it's so hot so long, that when it gets down into the 20s and 30s, it feels like, now when I lived in Michigan, 20s and 30s, hey, yeah, I better wear a jacket outside. Here, 20 and 30, you almost hate to leave your apartment because it's very frigid. So that's just one of the things. I think it depends on what your body gets accustomed to. But I don't think people necessarily can't live in the north where it's cold, or other places where it's, gets cold. Like I said, I don't know with my thyroid or lack of thyroid how I would do in extreme cold, but I know I don't do well in extreme heat either. So I always say if I could find some place that is like year round, let's say 60 to 85-ish, I would probably live a pretty good existence, being able to be outside and such. But, you know, I don't know if that really exists. Not in the United States anyway. I don't know. But, so, but don't automatically think that all of us people as we get older, we all got to move south because we can't handle living where it's cold. So that's just, I don't think, completely true. I think I could go back and live where it was cold as long as I was prepared. I miss wearing sweaters. That is one thing, living here in the South, I miss winter clothing. Sometimes it's nice to wear jeans and a hoodie, or I don't even think I own I own a sweater that I can pull on. I wear it as a coat usually if it gets really cold out, because it's got a few buttons, but it has to be something that's going to be really cold outside, because otherwise by the afternoon you're just too hot in it. Even when it's gets in the 50s. Now if it's in the 50s, if I wear short sleeves, I can get away with wearing a sweater all day, but that's maybe a week out of the winter, if you're lucky. So that's another misconception, that you have to live in the South where it's warm. Not all old folks have to go south, or at least not all the way south to like Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, Texas, any of those places. Arizona, you can pay me to live in Arizona. If you're from Arizona, I'm sorry. I'm sure your state is beautiful, but I'm somebody that would need to be up in northern Arizona. I see the heat and stuff in southern. This girl couldn't do that. And then, last but not least, there's a misconception, I think, that people always think, I see this like in younger generations. Some people think, life is United States is going down the tubes. Life is terrible. Life is going to just be terrible by the time I'm older. There isn't going to be anything left for me. That's just, it's going to be awful. Where, maybe it is going to be. But I have a feeling that, I'm sure when my parents were sitting in my shoes here and we were thinking, it's getting rough out there. Things are getting rough. They probably thought, no, it's not as rough as what you think it is. And I'm sure my grandparents, if they, whatever they endured, probably it was the same thing. They probably didn't, saw it the same way as, it's going to be rough by the time they're up there in age. Where now we're saying, it's going to be rough by the time what are our grandkids going to have in this world? So I have a feeling that that's been a thing for many, many decades, that people have always sat there seeing that their grandkids are going to have it awful. And granted, they do have it rougher. I know growing up, my grandparents could at least see us grandkids go out and ride our bikes, and, I didn't have to check in every 10 minutes for my parents to know I wasn't kidnapped. And even grown up or living in a small town, we did when our boys were young, they could hop on their bikes, ride to the library or ride to a friend's house. And they didn't have cell phones back then. And, as long as they checked in every couple hours or whatever, we knew they were safe. Could always call the friend's parents and, check on and make sure they were there, or drive by. Nowadays, you don't see very many younger kids out riding bikes around, and honestly, I can understand why parents wouldn't let them. Of course, here in the city, I don't know, maybe it's been like this for a very long time because of the traffic and all the people, but I can understand why it is. I mean, I worry if my grandkids are walking home from the school bus, they walk a few houses, and I think, man, that's is that safe for them to walk that far? And back in the day when I was growing up, we had the bus only stopped so many spots. You had to walk to the nearest thing, and our kids were the same way. We lived in Florida. They had probably a quarter of a mile or third of a mile maybe to walk to the bus stop and walk home from the bus stop because that's where the bus was. It didn't come to each and every house, so that's not really a new thing. I just think as we get older that we worry about that kind of stuff more. So, um, it's kind of a misconception, though. I feel that, you know, I'm thinking that by the time my kids are in the age group that I'm in, they'll be doing the same thing, sitting around thinking, how are my grandkids ever gonna survive in this world? Well, because they look back and see that, their childhood was so easy, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Like I see my childhood as it was so easy and free. And, I'm sure my parents and grandparents were the same way. Looked back and thought how easy it was and how difficult it was for, us kids growing up. So I don't know. That was just some of the things I could think of, some misconceptions on the whole aging thing. I'm sure there's many more. I got up this morning and I wasn't even sure what I was gonna talk about. I changed my mind. There was a couple things I was gonna talk about, and decided, I don't think I'm gonna talk about that today. So, I finally thought, there's just some misconceptions out there about what life is really like the older you get, and I mean, there's not like anything you can do to stop it. You just gotta roll with the punches and see how it all plays out, and actually be thankful that we got to the age we're getting to. Not everybody has that opportunity, and there's many people that we've known, and I'm sure you're the same. A lot of people didn't make it. There was, I remember, I think probably, well, I lost my grandma when I was very young. I don't even know how old I was. I'm guessing 4 or 5 years old, maybe, when my one grandma died. I don't remember my other grandparents. So that grandma passed away when I was very young. And then, losing a few kids from school here and there. One of my good friends at the time was hit by a car. I think we were in 5th grade. I had another classmate dying from, Rice syndrome. Many of y'all don't even know what that is anymore, probably. Back in the day, which this was when I was in 6th grade, so this was in the 70s, giving your sick child, I believe it was Tylenol, or aspirin, not Tylenol, I think it was aspirin, could cause them to get Rice syndrome, and they died from it, or could die from it. And there was a boy in 6th grade with me that's what happened. I don't remember if he had the flu or I don't remember all the details, but his mom was treating him with aspirin, and after that they found out don't give your kids aspirin when they're sick, that it can cause us. And if I'm not mistaken, that's about the time they came out like with Tylenol, non-aspirin fever reducers and pain relievers and stuff, because they found out it just wasn't regular aspirin. Aspirin wasn't as safe. So, there are plenty of people, and we've all known people over the years that have died, car accidents, cancer, you name it. There's been lots of people, everybody knows lots of people that haven't made it. So if you're in this age group, don't be all woe is me. It's, be thankful. Be thankful that you're in this age group, that you've made it this far. It's a blessing. God's kept us around to do more things. Our story, we have not completed our mission. So we are still here working on that mission. Whatever it is, whatever we're here to, supposed to be doing, we're not finished yet. So yeah, so be thankful that you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. That's a big thing. My parents were in their 80s before they finished their mission. So, that's, I always hope to get that age, as long as you're still healthy enough to, I don't want to be that age if I got to be locked up somewhere, but if I can be that age and still be able to manage on my own, yeah, I'm okay with that. So, well, I'm going to get off here. Try to keep this shorter today. I'm trying to hone it in so that I'm not dragging out forever, rambling on to y'all. But I'll be back here again real soon here. The next one. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye.